Great. So we're live. Magic Man Mycology. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing?
I'm well, man. Happy to get you in the room.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to have a platform where I can kind of share some of the things I want to talk about today.
Yeah.
It feels good. It's what I'm passionate about for sure.
That's awesome.
So, what do we want to talk about
Well,
today?
I think like what we were just talking about, like kind of how this started for you.
Yeah, so how this all started for me, man, it's a long journey. We can rewind way back. Right?
I got time. Yeah.
Oh, great. I got time too. So, raised in Southern Ohio, conservative, a child of the 80s, right? So the drugs are bad. Don't do drugs. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs with the egg in a frying pan, I can remember another big ad that was, don't do drugs or you'll go to jail. And it showed all these tatted up, hardened criminals. It just scared the bejesus out of all of us as kids.
Fear mongering. Yeah.
Yeah, fear-mongering, because all the things that Nixon did in the 60s and 70s and the war on drugs, it was all part of that propaganda still. So lived through my teens that way, got into my 20s that way. My folks were both also straight-laced. I never even saw my parents even take a sip of alcohol.
Wow.
Until they were like, I was well into my 30s. And it was odd to see that, right? After so many years, I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So they are normal people underneath. And I had just gone through some stuff in life, but had never even thought about any kind of alternative medicines or any kind of alternative remedies. Was working with a guy at a job I had, and we worked away. We were out of town. So we would have 3 or 4 hours to kill on our drive back from town. And he asked me one day, he's like, have you ever heard of Joe Rogan? And I was like, oh, yeah, the Fear Factor guy, right? Everybody's heard of Joe Rogan. And he's like, no, but do you know he has a podcast? And at that time, I didn't know. I was like, really? Joe Rogan has a podcast? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, do you know who Paul Stamets is? And I was like, no clue. Never heard of him. He's like, Paul Stamets is my idol. He's like, it's my big dream someday to have a mushroom farm. And like, Paul Stamets is the end-all, know-all of mushrooms,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
like, he is the mushroom guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. So I wasn't like uber interested because I was just like, okay, whatever. It's mushrooms, right? And so he goes, man, let's turn it on. Like, I really want to hear this. So I was like, cool. I don't care. It'll help us kill the 4 hours driving down the road. And so that was the very first time that Paul Stamets was on the Joe Rogan show. I didn't know what to expect. And Paul Stamets comes on and he starts telling these stories about his personal experiences with, psychedelic mushrooms. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. He cured stuttering through an experience that he had. And he said, it was life-changing for him. And so then he kind of took it upon himself of like, wow, how else can I share this with the rest of the world? Which is how Paul Stamets has become the Mushroom Man. But what really got me was he was talking about studies and, these clinical studies that they were doing with veterans and curing PTSD. These studies that they were doing for people with pharmaceutical untreatable depression. And he had quoted a study that John Hopkins had done that said they did this experience, a therapeutical setting for people. And after their psychedelic experience, 70% said it was the best thing that had ever happened to their life. The 30% that, quote unquote, had a bad experience said, yeah, it was okay. Don't know if I would do it again. But I did it, and so whatever. They followed up with those people 14 months later. 14 months later, the 70% were still experiencing the life-changing effects from that and still had positive thoughts about it and said that they often would think back to that experience, reground themselves, and were so happy that they had participated in that and done that. And the 30% who had a bad experience had no long-lasting negative effects. They weren't forever terrorized.
Huge upside, very little downside.
Right. It was like, yeah, they had a bad experience, but it didn't affect them for the rest of their lives. Yeah. They were just like, don't know if I would do it again.
Yeah, which could, to the point, it's like they may not be for everybody. Like,
Right. They might not be for everybody.
Yeah.
It's also set and setting, right? Maybe they weren't in the right mindset that day.
Maybe that like the clinical setting felt weird to him. Like it's like I'm not good with doctors.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. I don't know the whole lead up.
Yeah.
Right. But still, that nobody walked away from that with a bad life-lasting experience.
Yeah.
It was either really positive or neutral. And I was like, wow. Because that goes against everything that I'd ever heard growing up.
About psychedelics.
About psychedelics.
Yeah.
In general, right? Not
Yeah.
just mushrooms, just any kind of psychedelic substance was, oh, I know so-and-so took this trip and they never came back. And, this guy got brain damage.
Yeah, it's like the folk stories. You even used to, those are still around.
Yeah, exactly. They still float around to this day, right? But that was eye-opening to know that this was John Hopkins' clinical studies showing us hard evidence that those stigmas aren't true.
And how long ago was this?
It would have been the first podcast, so...
Seems like probably 2016?
Yeah, probably 2017, 2018. Yeah, it would have been 2018.
Okay.
Would have been 2018 when I listened to this one. And then again, him talking about how they were healing veterans that had long-term PTSD.
Yeah.
They were on opiates, they were on benzos, they were on all these other medicines that weren't helping them. And we were seeing the alarming increase in suicides with those guys. And that they were having a overwhelming positive response treating those guys with this kind of same routine, doing it in a therapy setting. And I was like, wow. It changed. It turned my thoughts completely around. Did a whole 180. So I became more open-minded to it. I started doing some research. I started digging in and just kept seeing positives. At that time, I was, in a professional career. My partying days were kind of behind me. I was a dad at that point, and I hadn't been around the illegal drug scene for 10 years, 15 years. And I was like, I need to try this. Like, I've got some deep traumas from my childhood that I really want to fix. And this sounds like the way I want to fix it.
Yeah, wow. So you didn't actually try psilocybin mushroom until adulthood?
Later on in life.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
Because at this time I would have been 38, right? So the light switch didn't flip on for me until well into my 30s. And so I was like, I'm going to try this. But I have no idea who to call. No idea where to even start. Right? Because I'd been out of that world for so long. And even when I was in my partying days, it was just cannabis. It was cannabis. And I think I had thought about doing mushrooms once before, but never did. And I was like, I don't even know who to call. Where do I start? So I reached out to a friend who reached out to a friend who reached out to another friend, and they're like, I can't find any. I can't find any mushrooms anywhere. Like, I don't know who's got them. And finally, one friend called me and came through, and they're like, hey, I met this guy. He's kind of sketchy,
That's
he says he's got some if you really want them, but, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Yes. Like, here's $40. Bring me what he's got. And she shows up with this sandwich baggie, not even a Ziploc, like the roll-up sandwich baggie. These things are rotting. Oh. Like, I can smell them. They're just soggy and they're rotting, and they look like the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, is this what they're supposed to be like? I don't know, I'm just like, I don't know. And she's like, I don't know either, man. She's like, that's what he gave me. And like, I opened the bag and I smelled them and I couldn't make myself do it. Yeah. I was like, this doesn't feel right. Okay. This doesn't feel right. So I'm still at 0.0. Yeah. Right? And I'm like, I'm a professional. I can't be out here.
God, even inside of your own head, you have these fucking stigma things that tearing you apart.
I'm like, man, I can't be the one out here chasing these around.
Yeah.
I can't be driving around trying to find somebody to buy these things from, because if my work finds out, I was also going through a divorce and a custody battle at that time, and I was like, if those people find out, it's the end of the world for me. Just because I want to heal some trauma, right? I want to heal some depression, some anxiety that I have. So I kind of put that on hold for about 6 months. You know, I was dealing with all these other legal things that was going on and moving out and getting my own place and everything that comes with that big change of life.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting at home one night and I listened to the Paul Stamets podcast again, and I was like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
Like this.
It's obvious now.
It's calling to
yes,
me, right?
yes,
Like I let it go for 6 months, and as soon as I listen to that again, it's calling me right back to it. It's drawing me right back to it. So I have to figure this out. So I got online and I ordered spores. I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure this out for myself.
Yeah.
You know, didn't know anything about cultivating them. Didn't know what else I needed. I got online and I'm like, all right, this is it. And it was even like, spores are legal, right? So like we can own spores. There is nothing against spores. I did hear Florida is trying to pass legislation now to make them illegal.
So what is the difference between a mushroom and a spore? It's like, because you have like a seed, but it's not a seed. Could you, do you know how to explain that?
Yeah. So mushrooms are their own thing.
Yeah.
They really are their own thing. Basically, spores are how a mushroom reproduces, right? And when we see a mushroom, that's actually the fruit, right? So just like an apple on an apple tree.
Yep.
And the bean itself is the mycelium, which we don't see because typically it's under the surface of the ground. What we're actually seeing is the fruit. The fruit is actually produced to reproduce. So once that fruit reaches maturity, it drops spores. But they're not like seeds in that they're not, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not pollinated.
Yeah,
Okay. So it takes essentially what is a male and a female spore to cross
to
get
get
start
another fruit.
mycelium. And when the mycelium reaches maturity, it produces a fruit, right? Or if it's stressed. Sometimes they are they're stress fruiters. If they know they're in a bad condition or a bad situation, the soil isn't what they want, the conditions aren't what they need, under stress they will produce fruits in a last-ditch effort to try to reproduce before the mycelium network dies off. So we're allowed to have those spores because they haven't bred yet.
Yeah.
You know, so there's nothing active there. There are some states now, ironically, after all these years, that are trying to make the possession of spores illegal. But for the most of us, you can own a spore, and there's no problem with that. So I ordered these spores, and it was even, you could tell there's still the stigma because I had to go through all these hoops of like buying some Bitcoin and then paying for it with Bitcoin, and then, you know, I don't know where they came from. They didn't send me a return address, like nothing. It was just like, yep, expect a package in the mail in 7 days. It's like, all right, cool. So
it's a long 7 days.
Yeah, it's a long 7 days, you know, right? Like, and these spore syringes show up, and sure enough, it's a liquid, a clear liquid with all these black spores floating around in it. And I'm like, great. Now where do we go? YouTube. YouTube is like such a wealth of information.
Yeah, man.
So I start watching these YouTube videos, and now I figure out, wow, okay, now I have to buy a pressure cooker because you have to sterilize the grains before you put the spores in. Okay, so I ask around. Well, my then girlfriend's grandfather had a pressure cooker. He hadn't used it in 20 years. You know, he's like, oh, you need a pressure cooker? Yeah, it's in the basement. Go get it. I'm like, all right, sweet. So go down and get this old crusty pressure cooker that's literally stamped like 1967 on the bottom of it, right? And I'm like, oh man, is this thing going to blow up in my kitchen? You know, we're looking at a 50-year-old pressure cooker here. I put a new seal in it. I check it out. I'm like, all right, this thing seems good. So I do that. Well, then everything I read, the next step says, oh, you need some sort of air filtration device. You need a flow hood. I'm like, a laminar flow hood? And they're like, yeah, you can't have any kind of contaminants floating around in the air when you're doing this stuff, because if one little mold spore lands on your sterilized popcorn, it's going to grow mold. And mold is stronger than the mycelium that you're trying to grow. I'm like, oh, man. Okay. So back to YouTube. I figured out how to make my own.
Nice.
Great. Okay. So we're in there. We're up to about like $400 or $500 worth of stuff now.
That's how it goes.
And
That's how it
haven't
goes.
even produced the first signs of life,
Yeah,
right? And I'm like, wow, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. I get all that done. I make my first grain jars. I inoculate them with the spores. And lo and behold, it works, right? I was like, whoa, there's stuff growing in my jars.
Yeah.
All right, okay, now we're making some headway. So then I start doing more research. Oh, now you got to make substrate. Okay, so pretty easy to make substrate. Found that recipe. Well, now you need a tub to grow them in. All right, back to the hardware store we go, and I spend more money. And not realizing this is like a 2 to 3 month process.
Yeah.
And I'm having fun. I'm learning a lot along the way. But I'm also watching this money rack up and get higher and higher and higher. But I'm trudging forward. It works. Somehow, first grow.
Yeah.
Doing now what I know, everything wrong, right? Like knowing what I know now. This is five years ago.
Okay.
I do this, right? Knowing what I know now, I did everything wrong. Somehow it works. I produced this tub that has what I think is so many mushrooms in it at that time. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I trust these. I know where these came from. I know what these are. So I harvest them and I dry them. I'm still scared. I pull this all off.
Did you have like friends that you were talking to? Like, did you have anybody that you were like that had a firsthand personal experience? So this is just literally you heard Paul and then took off.
I'm raw dogging this, man. I'm raw dogging this.
Yeah.
And it's like
so I could understand the fear just being unlimited. I mean,
yeah,
fucking unlimited. Yeah.
Right. I dry all these things out, and I have this like quart jar, clear full of dried psilocybin mushrooms. I don't even know how many ounces are in this thing. And I'm like, okay, now what? Now I'm getting scared because I hear I get on the internet again, right? And I fall into the hole that is Reddit.
That can go deep. Yeah.
That can go so many different ways, and so, because I'm like, okay, now I have them, but like, what do I do with them? Well, you can do lemon tech, or well, you can grind them up, put them in chocolate bars, or you can just eat them, And then I'm like, well, how much do I take? And what I grew was a very popular old school strain called Golden Teacher. Those are weak. Those aren't anything. You're gonna have to eat so many of those to have an experience. And other guys are like, no, don't eat that many. If it's your first time, you've never messed with psychedelics before in your life, don't go too far.
Which is good advice, I think. Right?
Yeah, which was great advice
Yeah.
looking back. I'm still scared. So I literally hold on to these things for another month after I have them because I still hear that voice in the back of my head. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. And I'm like, what if I never come back from this? What if everything they said is true, regardless of what I've read, regardless of what I've heard these scientists and doctors saying? What if this is true? Like, what if this really just messes me up?
What if I never come? Yeah.
Right? What if something happens to my brain and I'm never the same again? So it took me a while. I held on to them. And, dude, there was just this random day, early November, where it was one of those beautiful, like, 70-degree days, the sun's shining. I didn't have anything else to do. This is on a Saturday, and I'm just like, today's the day. Today's the day. I called a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, don't worry if you don't hear from me today, or if you get some really weird phone calls from me today, right? And I didn't even tell my friend what was going on, right? Because even my friends, I didn't think at that time would understand.
Wow.
I had really nobody to share this with.
Yeah.
But I had read that set and setting is everything. And I was like, okay. So, way over prepared, right? So I'm like, you know what? The beautiful thing for me is going for a hike. My entire life, if I need to reground, if I need to center, if I need to find peace within myself, I just go for a hike in the woods. So I pack this backpack clear full of stuff, right? Like I take 3 bottles of water, I take a space blanket, I take fire starting supplies, I take a flashlight, I take food. You know, I'm like, what if I get out in the middle of the woods and I'm tripping and I can't find my way back? Because we hear all these stories, right?
man.
About, oh yeah, like there was some guy standing naked in the middle of this field.
Like movies don't help you.
Howling at the moon. And I'm like, what if that's me and it gets cold? It's November. What am I gonna do? So I over prepare, as I always do. And I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this. So I weighed out what I thought was gonna be a conservative amount, a good starting amount for somebody. I weighed out 1.5 grams. And everybody's like, golden teachers, it'll be mild. No worries, man. You got this. It's like, cool. Strap on my backpack. I just eat them. I just throw them in my mouth and chew them up like crackers, man. You know? And I was like, all right, that wasn't so bad.
Fucking picking it out of your teeth.
Yeah, right? Like there's chunks in my teeth and I'm like, you know, picking them out and trying to wash it down with water really well. The taste isn't bad. They're just stuck, you know? And on I go. I head out the door and I'm like, okay, I've never done this before, but I think my game plan is when I start feeling it, I'm going to pull a 180, head right back to the house, right? So I'm hiking, not knowing at all what to expect. Never touched a psychedelic in my life, right? I'm hiking, and all of a sudden I notice the greens are a lot greener. And the oranges are a lot oranger. And I was like, huh, well, that's interesting. Still not clicking.
Yeah.
That it's setting
Yeah,
in, right? Because it didn't know anything.
No reference point.
No reference point ever,
yeah.
right? It wasn't until I got about a half mile into the woods that I see a helium balloon just laying in the middle of this big area of woods. And for whatever reason, man, that set me off. I got so angry that there were trash and litter in the middle of the woods. And so I was like, I'm going to sit down and think about this for a minute. And as I sat down and thought about it, I started hearing all these like construction equipment beepers in the background, which again angered me because they were plowing down forest, you know, and that's when I knew, I'm like, you're locked in with nature right now and you should probably go back to the house, right? And I was like, wow. And I'll never forget it. I had to hike up this big 1/4-mile hill and back down the other side. And so I'm pulling away and I'm getting back because I'm like, things are starting to happen. And I remember as I'm walking up the steep bank, all of a sudden, I don't feel like I'm walking anymore. I'm floating. Can't feel my legs. I'm like, how am I moving? I look down, I'm walking. I don't feel like I'm walking. And I was like, oh no. I hope I make it back to the house. I've got to get going. You know, whatever this hovercraft I am on needs to go faster, right? You know, I need to get back. And so I get to the top of the hill, and I got to make my way back down the hill. And I'm still pretty like coherent, but aware of what's happening to me at this point in time. And I'll never forget, man. I ran down the other side of that hill. It was muddy, it had rained, and I didn't care because I kept telling myself, what's the worst that can happen? You fall down and get dirty? Why are we so worried in life?
The fear just comes.
Right, the fear went right out the window.
Fuck
it's like, why are we replacing joy with fear? You know, I was so happy running down that hill. And any other time I'd have been like, oh man, what if I twist an ankle? What if I fall down and get my clothes dirty?
God, yeah.
You know, what if I step in a mud hole and get mud in my boot? And in that moment, I didn't care.
That's beautiful.
I just remember running and giggling like a kid down the hill and, you know, only had about another 10 yards to get to my front door. And I'm just like, this is awesome. This is great. You know, I can understand the appeal of this now. Man, let me tell you what. When I walked through my front door, my couch was calling my name. Because that's when the next phase kicked in.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, oof, okay. I was starting to see some like distortions. The
Yeah.
walls were starting to get a little wavy. And I remember laying down on my couch and closing my eyes because I was seeing all these weird distorted images, and I was just like, this is getting intense. I don't know what to expect here. And my first learning moment, other than the let's abandon fear and enjoy life, the couch starts rocking.
Mm.
I feel, and I'm envisioning and feeling that I'm on a raft in the middle of the ocean somewhere. So I feel like I'm on water, and I feel like I'm waving, and I'm like, what is happening right now? I don't understand this. And every now and then, the raft dips below the surface of the water, and I'm struggling for air.
Whoa.
And I was like, I kept fighting it, and the more I fought it, the stronger it got.
Of course.
The more it kept shoving my head under the water. And about that time, 3 guys that I know just kind of, I hear them. I don't see them, but I hear them. And they go, brother, just let go. Just let go. Just let it happen. Stop controlling it. You're going to be safe. We're down here waiting on you. Just let go.
I'm tearing up.
And I'm like, you guys sure? And they're like, yeah, we're here. Just let go. Okay. So I let go, and I start falling below the surface of the water. I'm sinking. But all of a sudden, this whirlpool forms and funnels down to my mouth, and I'm breathing through this whirlpool of air that's coming down to me from the surface. And the lower I go, the darker it gets, until I just hit sand at the bottom. And I stand up, and it's just white sand and pitch black. And I'm like, what is happening? And they were there, right? Those 3 guys were there. And they were like, see, man, we told you. Trust us. Trust it. We won't steer you wrong. But you got to believe in this. You have to let go. You have to stop controlling everything. Yeah, I was in awe. I was shook.
It's powerful.
Yeah, and I just stood there for a minute, taking that in, right? Of like, yes, let go of control. Stop trying to dictate everything in
That's
life.
the when you're talking about like all of those projections of fear. Like, I might twist my. That's control. You're trying to control. It's like, I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's fucking so beautiful.
And
First ever experience. That's
right. You know, and it kept going from there. You know, that was just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm down there in this dark abyss, this will kind of somewhat give my identity away, but not a lot. One of the things I was dealing with was the loss of a best friend. He and I had a super strong relationship for about 5 years, 6 years. Super close. You know, we looked at each other as the brothers that we didn't have. You know what I mean? And tragically, he was killed with his son in an auto accident.
Sorry to hear that.
And it was tough because it was a freak accident that still sometimes today I kind of sit and think about. He was driving down the road at 55 miles an hour. Beautiful, sunny, 70-degree day, no wind, no rain, no nothing. And as he was driving down this road, a massive oak tree fell off an embankment and landed directly across the front seats of his truck, instantly killing him and his son. And what I struggled with was he was such a good man and would have given anybody anything they asked for. Why him? And what are the mathematical odds of a tree falling off a bank and perfectly hitting the front seats of the truck at 55 miles an hour? half a second in either direction, he might still be here. You know, I struggle with that a lot. He came to me as I was under, because one of the things that I beat myself up about was we both got busy in life, and we both kept telling each other, yeah, man, come over for a cookout. Yeah, man, I'll be there next week, you know. Yeah, man, let's hang out. And that kind of went on for about a year, and we finally had solidified plans. Yeah, but we're going to have a cookout. I'll be over there next weekend. It's the weekend he passed. So it was tough, because I beat myself up for not ever getting to talk to him or see him, and he shows up. And we had the most amazing conversation. You know, he's like, dude, I forgive you. He's like, it was just my time to go. He said, I know it's tragic. I know it's hard for you. I know it's hard for my girlfriend. It's hard for my family. He said, but it's okay. It's all right. You didn't do anything wrong, man. Nobody did anything wrong. And gave me a big hug and said, you know, I'm still here. I'm still here. I still see what you're doing. You know, you're still here. And yeah, that was, I've never replicated that experience ever again, you know. The opportunity to make amends with your best friend changed my life, for sure. And, you know, some advice he gave me was, get out of the past. You know, what happened to me, and no matter how angry you are, no matter how confused you are, it happened. But you've got a whole life ahead of you. So please take that and move forth. You know, make the best of it that you can, because as you can see, tomorrow's never promised. And dude, you know, it still tears me up to this day.
That's fucking.
That was, you know, 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
And that was your first psilocybin experience, and I mean, so then, like, how do you come out of this? Like, you're down in the spot, and you're talking to these people. You're white sand. Is it just kind of like you close your eyes again, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like?
Yeah. So it's interesting, man. You know, I don't know if you've ever experienced it or not, but what I learned during that experience was the trip comes in waves, right? So I talked to many other people because what was happening
down in the same kind of like under the.
So what was happening was, like, I'm still down there, and I talked to him. You know, there was an ex-girlfriend. I saw her pass by, and it didn't affect me anymore. You know, she was the girlfriend that, like, I don't want to see her at Walmart. I don't want to see her in town. I don't want to see her at all. She just happens to, like, walk through my experience, and I'm just like unfazed. Like, whatever. You know, and that broke me of those cycles, you know. And so
letting go of the past.
Yeah.
Listen to your friend.
Exactly. You know, letting go of the past, moving on with life. You know, I was ridding myself of things that were bothering me. What happened was, you know, I have no concept of time.
Yeah.
Right? I know that generally an experience lasts 4 to 6 hours, right? So no idea how long I'm down there. And then I come back to, for a moment. I kind of regain consciousness, and I open my eyes, and I'm like, oh, I'm in my living room. You know, it's like things are still kind of wavy and blurry, but I'm only up there for what seems like a couple of minutes, and then I go back down again, and you know, make amends with my brother. You know, my brother and I were super close growing up. Kind of grew apart as adults, decided to go different paths in life, but a similar thing. You know, my brother's like, man, I know you're worried about me, but, like, I'm okay. If I ever need you, I'll reach out to you, but don't worry about me. Trust me in that if I ever need you, you'll know. Wow. Okay. And so the experience for me, the best way that I can explain it, was kind of like waves of the ocean as the tide is going away. Is that each successful wave of the experience doesn't quite reach the intensity of the last one. right? So it kind of comes up on shore, but it's not as
Intense or aggressive.
intense,
Yeah.
right? And then it goes back out again.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes back again, but just a little less each time,
Wow.
until eventually, 4 to 6 hours later, I'm kind of back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
I've left the bottom of the ocean, and I'm sitting on my couch in complete awe. Like, just still trying to take in everything that just happened, because I felt like I dealt with 38 years worth of questions and unknowns,
Control.
and trauma and control, in a matter of 4 to 6 hours, which seemed like it would be something that would take years of therapy to dig through.
Yeah.
And it all happened in one experience. And I'm just like, wow. And then even the next day, there's still what they call like an afterglow. In that, still had that light, floaty feeling, even though I was fully conscious, fully aware, not under the influence anymore. I felt like so much weight had been removed from my body that I wasn't carrying around anymore.
Like fear energy that you didn't have trapped inside, it's like you're just putting so much effort into holding on and keeping all this shit fucking right here because I can control the fear.
Exactly. They literally say holding it all inside, right? I was, but I didn't realize that holding it inside came with a toll of literally feeling like physical weight. I literally felt like I had a backpack on that had 50 pounds in it, and I just dropped it on the floor.
Yeah.
And now I'm walking around without that backpack, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
This is insane. Not only have I a rectified mental, it was taking a physical toll on me that I didn't even put two thoughts into.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's gone.
Yeah.
And that single experience changed the way that I looked at life forever.
Yeah. Similar to the John Hopkins.
Yeah. Forever. Made me a more empathetic person. It made me stop trying to control everything in my life.
Yeah.
Because I was one of those of, well, life will go how I want if I control how
Yeah.
life goes.
Yeah.
Which, have now found out that's not the way life goes. Things are going to happen whether you want them to or not. So why expend all the stress and energy trying to make things go the way you want? Just roll with the punches as they come.
Yeah. It's beautiful insight.
And it's allowed me a lot more emotional freedom to deal with those punches as they come, right? Because I look at our emotional capacity as a battery. And if I'm trying to control everything and I'm stressed out about everything and I got anxiety about everything, maybe I only have a 20% capacity to deal with the hard times.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not trying to control life and I'm enjoying life in its fullest on a day-to-day basis, I got 100% battery to deal with the bad stuff, man.
Which you just can't even fathom, because right now your battery's at 100%, but you don't understand that you're only outputting 20 because 80 is all caught up in here. One of my buddies, he talks about a lot of spiritual concepts, and it's resistance is something that recently I heard him talking about. And that's what I think you're talking about. It's like resistance to letting go of the control of those things, resistance to it's just like, and so it's like you can't even fathom, right? Like when you're depressed, it's like you can't even imagine not being depressed, and it's like then you're sitting next to somebody that's not, and it's like you can't even fathom. I feel like it's very similar that way.
And we can use that weight analogy as well, right? If I'm walking around all day long with 100 pounds on my back, and somebody adds 20 or 30 pounds to it, I'm almost at my breaking point, right? If I'm walking around all day with an empty backpack and somebody throws 20 pounds in it, okay.
You have the capacity to handle it.
Right, I have the capacity to handle it. 20 pounds is nothing in an empty backpack versus adding 20 pounds to somebody that's already at their limit.
Which is how you get, like, somebody that got their McDonald's order fucked up, and it's like they're going to raise hell. It's like, God, you gotta like empathize with them a little bit. You gotta understand that I think they'd also agree that this, fucking not getting bacon on their sandwich, like, didn't deserve that. You know what I mean? But it's like, again, they just can't even.
They didn't have the capacity
Yeah.
to go, hey, man, I wanted some bacon on my sandwich. I know it's not your fault, right? Because 9 times out of 10, the person that they're angry with isn't the person who made the mistake.
Yeah.
The poor girl at McDonald's handing your sandwich isn't the one that made it,
Mm-hmm.
but she's the one that's going to get it,
Yeah.
right? And so I feel like people are carrying around so much of a load and so much of a weight, they can't handle those small moments.
Yeah.
And for me, it's been the most freeing thing that's ever happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how long did you integrate this experience soberly before you tried to go back to a psilocybin experience again?
A long time.
Yeah.
A long time.
Which is, wow, that's interesting too. Maybe that's a testament towards you not doing it until you're later, like not just, because I feel like so many people experience it in the party stage time, and then that's how you kind of get away from the medicinal, like controlled, intentional, love-filled like thing, rather than we're trying to give, like, it just, yeah. I mean, like, I was a bartender, and like kids would come up to me and be like, "I'm on shrooms, man," and I was just like,
yes.
"Fuck,
Mm-hmm.
fuck."
Which can, they're finding can do more harm than good.
Well, like
Using them in a
it.
party
Yeah,
recreational
yeah,
setting,
yeah.
right? Because they reset the mind, and they're made to help dissolve ego, But if you don't go in with that intent and that intention,
Mm-hmm.
you just view them as a party drug. What they are finding is that sometimes it strengthens the ego.
Fuck.
Right? I took 5 grams last night, bro.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great time watching the band. Yeah, and it's like, okay, sure. I could have gone home and drank a whole bottle of 151 last night too, right? But I chose not to.
Yeah.
What's that proving to anybody but yourself? It's feeding ego.
Yeah.
And it's a difference in set and setting too, of how partygoers, they love the lights. And I understand why. They love the sounds, they love the lights, they love that integration, to where a therapeutical setting should be closed room, closed eyes, the right kind of music playing,
Mm-hmm.
with intent.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to go into this, and I want to try to fix this about me.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go into this, and whatever might pop up, I'm going to handle or deal with, And so those two worlds look very much so different. And I'm a massive advocate for them medicinally.
Mm-hmm.
Because, in my opinion, the medicinal value of what psilocybin mushrooms can do far outweighs the funness of them being a party drug. But it's feeding into that stigma, right? So we don't hear about the vet that's now not going to commit suicide because he went on a psychedelic experience. We hear about the guy at the concert crawling around eating mud, right? And so
he's probably on 3 other drugs at this time.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Who knows what else he was on,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Probably
exactly.
on nitrous and a tab acid and 5 grams of mushrooms and who knows what else. But as long as we continue to celebrate psilocybin as a party drug, that stigma is going to continue.
Yeah.
And it's not until we can make the medicinal value the forefront that we'll make movement on dispelling that.
Is anyone trying to push that hard, like the medicinal research and is Ohio, like where's Ohio with that?
I don't know where Ohio is with it right now.
Backlash. You talked about like opposite. You said Florida.
We could have a whole conversation about Ohio and Ohio's politics right now, man, with controlled substances. As I'm sure you've probably talked to a lot of the other guys about, us voting in recreational cannabis and now the backlash and
is it Senate Bill 168 or whatever? It's like they're trying to rip a bunch of shit back
House
that we
Bill
just
56
voted for.
And 160. They're trying to push everything back because I was optimistic about psilocybin when we got wrecked.
I heard New York was about to open up psilocybin. I heard that people were just starting to buy shrooms in fucking a bodega. Like literally, they'll put them in the window. Like
there are places that have decriminalized right?
Which is like Athens taco, right? It's like you
Yes,
could get pulled over with it.
exactly.
It's illegal, but I'm gonna
Yes.
slap you on the wrist. I'm
So
gonna take it. From you.
Denver is that way, for
I see.
example,
Okay,
right? So
okay.
Denver, it's I think it's a non-fine ticket.
Gotcha.
Of same way though, you can walk into several different storefronts. They're there for sale.
Yeah, I mean that's a good thing. It's got to start somewhere.
It's got to start somewhere,
Yeah.
right? Oregon just opened. And
Oh fuck, they went crazy. I thought like
they
everything.
gave the green light, right?
Yeah.
So like there are actual treatment facilities opening up in Oregon now, and Denver's working towards that. So Denver has a long-term plan of from decriminalization to legalization to allowing treatment facilities, like actual medical treatment facilities, to open up. So I was optimistic when Ohio voted in recreational because I'm like, man, maybe, just maybe, in the next 2 to 5 years, psilocybin will follow. And I had talked to some of the forerunners that pushed recreational cannabis in Ohio, and they were like, yeah, man, once we get cannabis like locked in and get it where we want to be, psilocybin's next. We're gonna push for that one as well.
And kind of cannabis like might open up some minds to like it's like
exactly.
maybe that's
and I've seen it. I've seen it. People that I think were living under the same stigma of, hey, I've got a really good job, I've got a family, I don't want to go to jail because I smoked a joint on my back porch.
Yeah.
And so I've seen recreational open some people's minds and allow them to be more open-minded about trying it. And it's been successful. I don't have high hopes for psilocybin coming next because of what's happening with our current Ohio legislation around the cannabis of, we gave this to you guys, but you didn't know what you were voting for. So we're going to rescind all of this now.
Yeah, it's fucking great. I also saw a bunch of people posting about like effective June 4th, like they're bumping the whatever purchase limit from an ounce to 2.5. So it's like, we voted on all this shit and like they implemented it and now they're trying to rip it away. But while they're ripping it away, they're like, hey, go buy. You can buy 2.5 times more. Like what the fuck? I don't understand.
It's money, brother.
Yeah.
It's money. And I think it's money on two folds, right?
What do you mean by that?
So I think one part of the money aspect is they saw how big the recreational market exploded when they legalized it with these farmers markets that are popping up.
Yeah.
Right? And how many people decided to home grow. I think that they were under the assumption that everybody was just going to go to the dispensaries, buy their cannabis at the dispensaries, and most people I know went, nah, give me some seeds.
Yeah, well, also
I'm going to pop them in my backyard and grow my own.
Yeah, man. It was just like the fucking like you can't go from black market prices to fucking paying double for twice as bad weed. And I don't want to like dig the dispensaries because like they have good stuff. I support. I mean, I go to Movano. Shout out to Movano. I've been to the Herbal Wellness Center. Used to be Little Debbie's. So I got but for sure, yeah. I mean, I'm growing. I'm homegrown.
Yeah, exactly. I can grow as well. Yeah. It's another amazing medicine. So I think that they want the tax money. They want to make it to where you have to go to a dispensary and buy. They want to limit your home grow, right? And I think the other thing that they're finding, which is relative to my personal experience, is I don't drink alcohol anymore. About 2 years ago, I decided to really cut back on alcohol. And when cannabis went rec and I started using cannabis, I was like, I don't care if I ever drink again. Yeah. Why? Yeah. I don't get hangovers.
Yeah. Well, people my age, it started around COVID because around COVID, like, just online and everything, everybody's like, oh, fucking getting plastered at noon today. And it was like that for a year. But then it was like, just towards the back end of COVID, it's like, what people talked about the COVID-15 and they, whatever it is. That was like the first time that I saw like a big, like kind of society-wide, just like fuck that. And I think now people are explaining it like it's kind of a little bit of like the younger generation is kind of like pushing away from their kids because the information's out there that alcohol's not good for you. No. And then so it's like not only can they rebel against their parents, but then also it's just, I mean, dude, I don't think anyone under the age of 25 is like out here trying to talk about the great things that alcohol can do, but I think in moderation, like, I mean, we're talking about using mushrooms in a moderate, like intelligent way. Yes. There's you can have a couple beers and and like enjoy like a little, like that's still okay.
That's still fine.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm with you in the like, yeah, I think a lot of people are in your same boat.
And so the state's losing tax dollars on alcohol.
Yep, DUIs, speeding.
DUIs, alcohol sales, because the state gets a cut off of every alcohol sale.
Yeah.
So, okay, now all of a sudden dispensary sales are below target. Alcohol sales have dropped through the floor. State Highway Patrol's not getting money for
You're not
DUIs.
the first person on this podcast to speculate these exact things. Yeah.
And so my fear is if they do bring psilocybin about in Ohio, it will be state licensed facilities only, which will be heavily taxed, which only the richest of people with the biggest of backers will be able to afford to open.
This is actually what's happening in cannabis. It's exactly what's happening with cannabis.
It's going to be a repeat of what's happening with cannabis. And I know that there are a couple of major corporations already in the United States that are trying to patent psilocybin as a psychological treatment drug so that they will have first rights should this all be able to come to fruition.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. So big money's already digging in. They know it's the next wave.
Yeah.
They're seeing cannabis laws fall across the country. They know psilocybin is most likely the next big money wave.
Well, so you had these stigmas growing up as a child. You have this experience now as, a grown adult. And I mean, like, so then are you just meeting people now kind of in the space and in the network at these like trade shows and stuff? Or like now, do you think that it's as bad as it was, right? Is the stigma still as bad as it was? Do you think people are more open-minded? Like I don't even know what I'm asking anymore.
Yeah. So I think people are becoming more open-minded, especially the younger generations, right? Yeah. I think that some of your older crowd still has a stigma, but I'm seeing that let go. And so I still was underground for many years because we hadn't recreationalized cannabis yet that allowed us to have these farmers markets, right? So everything was done on like Discord boards. I had friends from all over the country that we would talk about cultivation with. We would share spores, send spores back and forth to each other of, hey, man, I got this strain. Oh, I got this one. Hey, let's trade. Right? Because they're like Pokemon cards. Once you've grown one, you want to grow them all. They're like, oh, man, look at this one. This one's cool. Look at the cap. Look at the gills. Look how short it is or look how tall it is. Or
when you say gills, you're talking about like the bottom
underneath,
part?
Yeah, where the spores come from,
okay,
right?
Okay.
But what's cool is, something that people often experience on mushrooms is geometric patterns. Mm-hmm. Ironically, if you turn a mushroom cap over and look at the gills, a lot of times they'll create geometric patterns.
That's trippy. Yeah.
Well, and so it's just like it all ties together. It's all trippy. It's all really interesting. So we're still underground for many years.
Yeah.
Right. What allowed me to further network is when we went recreational, they started having these cannabis farmers markets. My buddy Ronnie calls me one day and he's like, hey man, you want to come hang out with me at this farmers market?
Shout out Ohio boys, Ronnie Smith.
Ronnie Smith, Ohio boys. Man, you want to come hang out with me? I was like, yeah, I'll see what it's all about. I'll ride with you, man. I'll hang out with you. And so I'm hanging out. It's a great time. I see all walks of life. It was not what you would expect, We were set up in the middle of farm country, in the middle of the Bible Belt of Ohio, and I'm seeing all these good old boys in their Wrangler blue jeans and bib overalls, and they're buying clones.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Everybody from 20-year-olds to 80-year-olds are walking through the door, all walks of life, and everybody's got a smile on their face. The environment's amazing. And a light bulb goes off. Man, I should come up with something that I can offer
legally
at these shows, right?
Yeah.
But on the legal side of things. Yeah. And I've been having that internal battle for a couple of years, because I'm not growing a massive amount. I'm just growing a couple little tubs here and there for my own personal use. But I'm only experiencing once every couple of years. Yeah. So I have this abundance and I'm giving them away, but that's still that's illegal, right? This is still an illegal substance. And I want to share medicine with the people, but in a legal fashion.
Mm-hmm.
how do we do this? How do I not go to jail over a silly eighth an ounce of mushrooms, right? Because I'm trying to share what I experienced with other people.
Via love and passion and intent. And, like, there's a, yes.
There's a difference,
Yes.
right? And so I'm sitting at the show and I come home and the light bulb goes off of, you have to start creating these grow kits so that people that were in your situation don't have to go through the same situations that you did, right? Because I'm seeing a lot of these kind of people at these shows. 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, clean-cut professional people that I know aren't going to go knock on the corner, right, looking for a baggie of mushrooms. And I was like, how do I cater to these people? How do I cater to people like me that want just enough for medicine, but make it easy as possible for them and something they can do in the privacy of their own homes? And I kicked around a few different ideas, but again, it still required them buying all the expensive equipment because most people don't have a pressure canner in the house anymore, right? Grandma does, but the majority of adults.
The purpose of the pressure canner, so what is it? Like, you have to get to a temperature above boiling?
Yes. Yeah. So basic physics are anytime that we increase the pressure of a vessel, we can also increase the temperature because water will only boil at 212.
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't matter how hard you boil it, how far you turn up the stove, at atmospheric pressure, it will only reach 212 degrees. But if we can contain that and increase the pressure inside of the vessel, we also increase the temperature at which water boils. That's why you have a radiator cap on your car, right? If you were just to open that, it would be boiling all the time. But those caps have a rated pressure to allow your coolant in your engine to go to a higher temperature to better cool your car off, right? So the purpose of that, though, is to kill off any other microorganisms that might be living on your grain source because you have to have it sterile.
Yeah.
Cultivating mushrooms is an absolute surgical, sterile procedure because, we can't see it in this room, but right now there's millions of spores floating around us right now. They're on us, they're in the air, they're on those plants, those pots of soil over there are clear full of them. There's just so many bacterial, fungal, mold spores floating around, and all it takes is 2 to land on grain, which most grains already have them in them just because they're not grown in a sterile environment, right? So we need to sterilize before we inject our spores, right? So that's an expense, which is the same thing I ran into, right? Of like, man, if I just want to go on one experience, I don't want to spend $700 to $1,000 to get there.
Yeah.
And I already have all this equipment. So I decided to start making kits where I pre-sterilize everything, right? Like I put this bag together and I sterilize your grain and I sterilize your substrate and then I put the whole thing in an autoclave and I seal it up in a sterile environment. And then I provide you with a spore syringe that I also make in a sterile environment. And you just go home and A plus B equals C, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Good. So you said this a few times. Substrate and what else?
And grain.
Yeah. So the grain. That's like where people are like the Uncle Ben's rice like type, right? Yeah. I heard. I've never done it. I've never grown mushrooms, but
yes. So mushrooms only need food, water, and some air exchange. They're simple, just like us, right? So the grain is the food.
Okay.
Our substrate really is just there to provide water, and then we have to filter air and exchange air somehow because they put off massive amounts of CO2. And so we need to refresh that and get that air fresh. That's all it takes. It's literally all it takes. They're such simple creatures. So I decided to come up with these bags because, again, I view them as medicine. I want them to be available to anybody and everybody that wants that medicine.
Yeah.
without dealing with the street corner guy,
Mm-hmm.
without buying the thousands of dollars of equipment. Because as soon as you get online, everything and everybody says, yep, you got to buy the pressure cooker, you got to buy the flow hood, you got to buy this tool, you got to buy that tool, you know, you got to do this and you got to do that. It's all gatekeeping.
Yeah.
It's so ironic.
Or just closed-minded individuals that somebody that taught them told them that, and they don't even believe it, but they're regurgitating it because it's fucking, this is the way it is.
Reddit is the worst.
Yeah, of course. Man. They don't even know. Yeah, that's the problem with Reddit, is that it's just, you just have people repeating things. They don't even know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah, they've probably never grown in their life, but they're telling you.
Yeah,
you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
And the other ironic thing is, man, is the mushroom industry as a whole is so full of ego, which mushrooms are supposed to kill our ego, right? I laugh about it on the daily, right? Of like, wow, that guy has not had a taste of his own medicine. You know, he's trying to tell me how this works.
Literally
and the only way that it works, and that his way is the way. But there's a million ways to get there, you know? And so a lot of them gatekeep, right? Because people want to feel important and knowledgeable and powerful. Yeah. So they get on there and these new people come on board, right? Of like, hey, man, how do I do this? Oh, well, you're going to have to buy this thousands of dollars of equipment, and then you're going to have to pay me, and I'll teach you the way, right? You just send me over $300. We'll set up some Zoom calls, and I'll show you the way to grow. It's all bullshit.
Yeah, thank you.
It's all bullshit, man. And it just infuriates me.
Yeah.
Right? So my purpose with what I have decided to do, and again, thank you to Ronnie Smith for dragging me to that first show because it's what kicked this off.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Is I want anybody and everybody that wants to cultivate their own medicine at home to be able to do that as easy as humanly possible.
Yeah.
With as little other input is needed, because that's how I can share the power of the medicine and remain legal.
Yeah, accessibly. Yeah, accessibly. Yeah.
You know, because I can ship things right to your door.
Yeah. So somebody does buy it. Then, like, what is? So they've already got the sterile substrate. They've already got the sterile grain. Like, they just are inoculating the bag and then just kind of floof in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Where could somebody find these products?
So Cool Digs carries them locally.
Awesome.
Okay. But I also have a website.
Cool.
www.magicmanmyco.com.
Perfect.
Real simple square store. You know, you can go in there, pay with your credit card, pay with Apple Pay, pay with whatever you want.
Awesome.
And because nothing has been inoculated yet, it's 100% legal for me to send this right to your door.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a box that comes with a bag, and that bag's all sterile inside, and we grow them right inside the bag. Right?
I've definitely seen them at Cool Digs.
Yeah, it has a filter patch on it that allows the breathing of the air, but will keep mold spores out. Right? So it's like, I swear, I'm not like blowing up my product.
Yeah,
I have made this as
talk
easy
that talk, man,
as it possibly can be.
Yeah.
If you can take some 70% alcohol and you can wipe off a little rubber patch and you can stick a needle in that little rubber patch, you can grow your own mushrooms at home.
Wow.
It's literally that simple.
Yeah.
You know, you inject it, you wait for the grain to colonize. When the grain's fully colonized and everything turns white on the bottom of the bag, then you mix it all together because it's layered. You get it. Grain on bottom, substrate on top.
And I'd assume you're inoculating it in the bottom?
In the bottom, right? There's a self-healing rubber patch in the bottom. You just stick your needle in there. You pull your needle out. When you pull the needle out, it seals up behind it, right? You mix it all up. You pack it down and you set it on the shelf. And when it fully colonizes and the mycelium reaches maturity, it will fruit. And once it fruits, that's when you cut the bag open. You never have to open that bag or touch it.
Yeah, that's what I was actually expecting it to be like. That's because whatever all the totes, so they always like.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of people grow in mono tubs, you know, which is another way. I personally have grown in mono tubs for years. That's how I did my first grow. Most people don't need the yield that comes from a mono tub, right? You know, like I said, my very first grow, which was not great looking back, I ended up with ounces of mushrooms off my very first harvest.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do I do with all these? Ironically, though, I have trained my genetics over the years to work ideally in these bags that I sell. And I have people pulling anywhere from an ounce to 4 ounces
Wow.
out of one of these grow bags.
Is like the difference in that just the strain? Like,
Yeah, strain, and they're mushrooms very adaptable and environmental, so you can train them, right? So what I've done is before I release this product, I trained them to grow in this exact bag that I'm offering.
what do you mean you trained him to do that?
So you can clone them, right? So mushrooms are just like human beings.
Yeah. I thought we were very, very closely related to mushrooms.
We are.
Like an
We came from mushrooms.
unreasonable amount.
We came from mushrooms, right? So fungi was here before us.
Whoa.
It's just like anything else. You know, I can take a human being from South Florida and I can put them in Alaska. They're going to survive. They're not going to be happy about it.
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense to me.
You know, or change a diet. I can take a vegan and say, okay, you're going on a carnivore diet, and they're not going to be happy. They'll live.
Yeah, I see the analogy you're making.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I've done with these genetics is, because when you go work from spores, a wild spore, there are literally millions of genetic possibilities. So what we do is we clone, and then we take spore swabs from that, chasing what it is that we want. So, you know, let's say I grow a bag, and maybe it only gives me 4 or 5 mushrooms the first time. But there's this beautiful cluster of 3 mushrooms that are like the perfect size. They were the first ones to pop up in the bag, so I know they're the quickest fruiters, right? They're happy in that environment, in that bag. I swab those ones. And so I take those spores from those ones, and I put them to agar, put them to grain, and grow them again.
Just weed out all those Florida folks up in Alaska.
Exactly,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right?
That makes a lot of sense.
It's genetic selection.
Yeah.
So the next time, maybe I get 2 or 3 of those clusters now, instead of just the one. There's still some other scragglers in there. I've still got some genetic diversity. I swab my favorite cluster again, and I grow it back. And I just keep doing that until all of a sudden I have a bag full of the fruits that I want.
The clones that did what? Yeah, that makes
the ones
sense.
that did
So how are you cloning? What do you mean you're swabbing these in this thing?
So I'm going back to spore, right? Because the spores are in the gills. So when a cap opens up and you see all those gills underneath, the spores are lodged in there.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we take a sterile cotton swab and we gather those spores
on the bottom, like you're
on
just
the
running
bottom.
that on the
Yep,
bottom?
just very gently in the bottom, and you collect those spores. Because the other way that you can do it is by cloning, which is actually a tissue clone, right? So, but that doesn't necessarily lead to long-term stability in the genetic.
Okay.
Right? So like if I clone a cluster, maybe I get that cluster that I'm looking for, maybe I don't. But if anybody ever swabs it for spores and goes back to spore, they're going to have a very wide variety of phenotypes and looks and sizes and all different looking fruits in there, which sometimes is kind of cool, but when you're harvesting, it's a pain.
Yeah.
Because they don't all mature at the same time. So you're in there like, okay, these 3 guys are ready to come out, but these 3 are still babies. And sometimes that's fun. But what I like to do is get it to where that bag is full and they're all ready to go at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And so the best way to do that is by going back to spore, because we're just narrowing the genetic diversity through DNA, not necessarily cloning a single fruit that we like. And that's where the stability comes in. Because even if somebody else decides, hey, I want to swab one of these fruits, it should still produce the same as it did for me. And so that's been a long time project of adapting my genetics to the environment that I'm providing you with to grow them in, which is what sets my product apart, right? I'm not the first guy to offer these all-in-one bags.
Of course.
They're a very popular thing amongst newbies. I'm the first guy who actually puts passion and guarantee behind them and offers you the spores that go with. Because there's a lot of money grabbers out there in the mushroom world right now. What we're seeing is, as some of the big cannabis markets have flooded, and now they're dying off. People are now coming to the next wave, like we talked about. They're getting into the world of psilocybin without the knowledge that they need to provide quality products or the mentoring or the information on how to do them. They're just looking to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
So there's several companies out there offering a product similar to mine. They have no idea how they truly work. Typically, an all-in-one bag, which is what they're called, is marketed towards the beginner, and it makes them real easy to go, you must have made a mistake. You're a beginner. There's nothing wrong with my product. Even if it's a substandard product, it's a real easy one for to go, well, if you're buying one of these, you must be a beginner. You must have made a mistake.
Yeah, and probably they are, and so maybe they don't feel like they have enough agency to be like, wait a minute, man, maybe you just fucked me over.
Exactly, yeah. Maybe this was garbage to begin with, right? And then they're also making you source genetics somewhere else. So we run into the same thing, right, of that same analogy of the Floridan versus the Alaskan of, okay, so you get on whatever website and you order some genetics from them. But we don't know what those genetics, what they're used to living in.
What they prefer,
right?
what they thrive
so
in.
maybe that guy developed those genetics to grow in a tub, you know, a mono tub at 72 degrees, that he was in there messing with it every day, right? And so if you go to try to put those now in that bag,
it's like a low maintenance. You're not doing all that work. Yeah,
right. They'll survive, and you might get something, but it won't be ideal.
Yeah,
they won't be necessarily happy about it. So that's where it sets my product apart from a lot of the other guys. I truly want people to succeed.
That's awesome.
It's not about the money, right? This is more so about me making the medicine available to the general public.
That's what's up. Have you found any good resources? Is there a website? Is there a specific Reddit thread that has been helpful for you just over this journey of becoming a grower?
No.
What? So then, how is this, like, you're just waiting until you see something like on 7 different sites to go, wait, maybe there's something there? Like, is it that you're just filtering through fucking mud for years?
Filtering through mud, and most of it, man, trial and error. Right.
Experience. That's the best teacher.
Right? Yeah. It's because, like, you know, it is that way. You can, what I've discovered and what I try to tell all my people is there are a million different ways to get there, right? I won't sit here and say that my bags are the only way to grow. There's a million ways to get there. Where people get in trouble is, I did this when I first started, is, oh, this guy did this at step 1, but this other dude did this at step 2. So I'm going to do that. And then this other guy did this at step 3, so I'm going to follow that.
Oh, like mixing
techniques, right? Instead of just going, okay.
And you're changing so many variables you don't understand.
Exactly. Or maybe they're not meant to work together.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of just finding a person and following them all the way through. So many newbies, including myself when I was new, go, well, I like his idea here, but I like his idea over here better for this, but then I think I want to try this. And rarely does that ever go well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Reddit is horrible for that, in that if you get on there and ask a question, you'll get 1,000 different
He's
answers.
fucking ping-ponged all over the world. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's mind-blowing to me. And like we talked earlier of, there's so many people on Reddit that have never even cultivated before. But they're on there acting as though they're the
There's no way to differentiate, you know what I mean?
The world's most experienced cultivator. So I tell all my people, avoid Reddit, please.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. But, you know, I've learned from a lot of experience, a lot of failed, ideas. I'm like, man, maybe I'll try this. And it doesn't work.
Yeah. Another, like, when you were explaining, like, the taking this from this person and this from this, I was building a chicken coop, and we took the frame from one video, and we took the wheels from another video, and we took the hitch from this video, and then we get to, we build the frame, and then we're trying to put the fucking wheels on, and then we realize, like, oh, for the lever to work, like, actually, they had a box frame. Like, they didn't have a fucking bottom square frame with the, you know what I mean? It's just like, so... it was just, it's, you don't know what you've never done it. But now, right? I know, I've done it before. So it's like, I learned that lesson. You can't mash these together. It's stuck out to me.
You get some experience, right? Yeah. If you build 10 more chicken coops, you might be able to come up with the idea of, now I can. Now that I understand how this works, now that I've built 10 successful chicken coops, maybe now I can add these wheels, because now I know I need to change this to make this part work, right? But the first time around, you got no idea
Figure it out,
until
man.
you get there. And you're like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
And so a big part of my day is fixing people's what have I done?
Wow.
You know, because I do offer one-on-one support for all my people.
Through
Instagram.
Yeah, Magic Man Mycology.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, through Instagram. I tell all my people, if you have any questions, please reach out to me.
It's awesome. I appreciate you being a resource to them.
Yeah. Because I want people to succeed. You
Yeah.
know, this is my giving back. This is my passion. My passion is more about the education and the sharing of the medicine, less about the money in the business.
Yeah.
I could care less. I'm just trying to cover my costs.
Yeah.
Right, in my time with the business. I'm not trying to get rich off of this. I don't want to get rich off of this. I don't want it to become a full-time job, right? Like, I already have one of those. But I laugh because so many times people will come back to me and be like, man, I didn't think it was going like I thought it should, so I got on Reddit, and I did this, and that, and this. And I'm like, why? Well, you know, because this guy on Reddit said that's what I needed to do. And I was like, all right, man, so let me ask you a question. If you go out and you buy a brand new BMW and you're having issues with it, you going to take it down the street to the Chevy dealer and have them tell you what's wrong with your car? No, you take it back to BMW and you BMW help you out with the problem, right? And they're like, oh, like, yeah, why not just go back to the people who made it?
Yeah.
Instead of some other random guy down the street. Yeah. That's the majority of my
All of
day.
your analogies are just really hitting home with me.
Yeah. I try to make things so everybody understands.
I'm an
right?
analogy guy. I like it.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. Sometimes it gets me in trouble.
Yeah.
But,
Me too.
Or like, I'll make an analogy that somebody doesn't get, and they're
That's
like,
the worst.
huh? I'm like, ooh.
And then you have to start explaining it, and then it's just over. It's like, it ruined it. You know what? Let's just not worry about it.
Just never mind. Or you got to hit the reset button and make a new one. Like, oh, you're not a car person. Okay, let me think about another way to put this. But that's how we are where I am now, is just trying to offer people the medicine legally. And it's gone over so well.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So well. So many first-time growers, you can tell the mycology marketplace is very much so infiltrated with people who don't care selling subpar products, because the standard has become your stuff actually works. And that's sad. It shouldn't be that way. I would rather people come to me and be like, hey, man, your stuff worked better than the other guys. Or, hey, I like this other guy's product better than yours. They both work, right? But, I like his ideas a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm happy about that. The sad reality is multiple times a day, man, your bags actually worked. I bought this from this guy, and I bought that from this person. I bought this from this other large corporation, right? None of them worked until I bought yours. And it did what you actually said it was going to do. And I'm like, it feels weird to be praised for doing what I would consider to be the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Right? We could go on for days about society and where society stands and what we deem acceptable.
That's funny. So, Magic Man Mycology on Instagram and www.magicmanmyco.com. Yeah, I'll get links in the description. Yeah. One thing you said, maybe it wasn't on the recording, but in the very beginning you said you're into music. What, you play an instrument or something?
Yeah, I do. I've played music for, I started when I was high school, so 30 years.
Nice.
Started as a guitar player. Now I spend more of my days playing bass.
Cool.
So I'm a jack of all trades. Yeah. I'm into a little bit of everything.
How'd you learn to play guitar?
Taught myself.
Wow. What do you reading notes, or you just watch somebody play on guitar? What do you mean you taught yourself?
So I'm old.
Yeah. Right? Oh shit! You didn't have YouTube when you were growing up.
Didn't have YouTube, right? But I remember as a teenager walking through the grocery store, and they had come out with these Guitar One magazines, and they were tablature, which is a way easier version to read the music.
I see.
I tried to learn how to read music, and it confused me, and I was like, never mind, I'm not going to do it. These Guitar One magazines came out with what they call tablature, and I just sat down and
Tablature is like where instead of the notes, it's like showing you the positionings.
Basically,
like,
yeah, there's like a line for each of the 6 strings on the guitar, and then there's a number that coincides with the fret on the guitar. And then
so then each string, it's like the number on that string. You know, you're going down to that fret
That
on this
fret.
string and this string.
Yeah.
I can maybe figure that out.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all, it's literally 6 lines, and each line will have numbers on it of what fret you play that string on. Reading it left to right, just like you would music.
Yeah.
So that's how I learned.
Wow,
Was
that's
just
pretty cool.
self-taught in my bedroom, figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like everything else. It's been pretty much my life was, all right, well, we'll just figure this out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, but yeah, I don't know what the future holds for the company.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what legal future looks like. I'm optimistic though that it expands.
Yeah.
I really hope that we can get rid of these stigmas, and people can get the medicine that they need without worrying about going to jail.
Yeah. Other than just like kind of purchasing your products, how can the community support your mission and what you're doing?
Being open-minded.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that's the biggest battle that we have to cross right now, is getting society to understand how beneficial psilocybin is as a medicine, and getting away from that stigma of, oh, it's going to cause brain damage, or, oh, it's going to make you stand out in the middle of a field naked howling at the moon. It's such a beneficial medicine for so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
It almost any mental issue can be helped or cured with psilocybin mushrooms, because of how it reacts with the brain. The most common ones, obviously, that we're aware of right now are things like addiction, anxiety, depression, PTSD. Those are the big 4. And the reason that it works so well is the way Michael Pollan described it. So Michael Pollan wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind. And,
Heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great read. I think he also did maybe a Netflix miniseries.
Cool.
Also. And there's several presentations by him on YouTube. They're all really good reads. But basically it was his experience in also never having messed with psilocybin as like an adult, and what he learned and what he experienced and how he feels about it now. Which was a very similar thing. He's a very big advocate now for therapeutic settings with intent, and actually recommends, if you're going to do this, don't do it at home. Go to an actual therapeutic setting and go through the full experience. But the way he described many of our mental issues, and it makes sense, you're an analogy guy, so you're going to get this, is that our brains are kind of like a big hilltop that's covered in snow.
The sleds.
And the sleds, right? So every time we have a thought, the sled comes down, and it makes a path.
Yep. Which is the overthinking thought. Like, I have this my mind just goes. It just goes, and I can't.
It automatically falls into that path, right?
Yep.
Like, once we've really set that path in place, our brain always goes there, whether we want it to or not.
Path of least resistance. Like, it's literally just how does water flow?
We might be
right?
trying to shoot between the paths.
Yes.
And 99% of the time, we're going to get drug into a pre-existing path.
Yes.
And so those paths are all ingrained in our brains.
Mm-hmm.
Psilocybin is like a fresh fall of snow.
Yeah.
In that it allows for neuroregenesis, it allows for neuroplasticity, and it puts a fresh coating of snow down, and then we get to redetermine where those pathways are. So if you think about any of those issues that I talked about before, those are all cyclic thinking. Addicts are cyclic thinkers. Having a bad day, I'm going to drink. Having a bad day, I'm going to drink. I don't feel right, I'm going to drink, right? Depression's the same way. You get in your head and you constantly think about the down and out, the bad, the ugly, and you can't get out of that cyclic motion because those paths are cut in place.
Yeah.
Psilocybin's that fresh layer of snow that allows us to come out of that and start new pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're finding now, I shared a post today, is that there's promise also in other neurological brain-associated issues. I saw the one I shared today was about Parkinson's, right? And they just did a safety study on, I believe it was 12 people, varying degrees of Parkinson's disease. And they just tried giving them a couple of doses spread out over time.
Macro or micro?
They would be kind of in between. They'd be moderate doses. I think
Uh-huh.
it was 10 milligrams of psilocybin and then 25 milligrams of psilocybin, which doesn't correlate directly to dry fruit. Dry fruits are typically between 1% and 2% by weight. So a decent amount, though, just to see how they reacted. So they were watching brain activity, they were watching blood pressure, they were watching a lot of their vital signs to make sure it wasn't going to harm them, because we don't know a lot about Parkinson's disease, right? What they found was that it was very beneficial in this initial pilot because, and I didn't understand this, that Parkinson's starts with an onset typically of mental. So typically somebody who is developing Parkinson's disease will show unexplained anxiety and depression before the physical starts to set in. It's the precursor. And what they've also discovered is that they have been able to figure out how far into Parkinson's you are by your mental state. So you sit down with a psychologist who is, trained in diagnosing people with Parkinson's, and they can go, oof, this guy's got a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, which typically coincides with their physical state.
Could it be that mental state's like leading to the decline?
Yes, and so they say that they coincide, and that typically the mental state will fall quickly followed by the next physical decline, that they very much coincide with each other. So on this test pilot, what happened was, after the psilocybin experiences, reduced anxiety, reduced depression, improved physical movement. These people went backwards on the timeline of Parkinson's.
Why aren't you just fucking shoving that? Like, open the fucking gate.
Right.
What are we doing?
What are we doing, right? Like something so complex that we know nothing about is Parkinson's.
Even if we don't know why it's working. Because do we understand like what the psilocybin is doing that is reversing this?
It's all part of that neuroplasticity, neuroregenesis. Is it's making parts of the brain fire that have stopped firing.
The fresh coat of snow.
The fresh coat of snow, right? And what they found out was with that initial test pilot, like I said, it was only 12 people, that these effects lasted 2 or 3 months.
Whoa.
Before they started to see a slight fall again. So they're getting ready to launch the next phase.
What state is this in?
Who did this? I believe it was one of the California universities.
Okay.
You can the full report's on my Instagram story right
cool.
now. They're getting ready to do this with 100 people. Now that they've determined that there were no negative medical effects, there were no setbacks, that there were only improvements, and 2 to 3 month long lasting improvements with these people that they piloted this with, they're going to do 100 people now.
Wow.
And see if this isn't something that we can use to help improve people's lives with Parkinson's.
That's exciting, man. 100 people in 12 is a big difference.
It is a big difference,
That's a big difference,
right? But let's say 95% of those people have a positive experience, and we give them quality of life back with a non-addictive, no medical side effects drug that grows from the ground. What are we doing? Why is this not everywhere?
Cooking up chemicals into pills and pushing them down people's throats.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing.
And it's the same way with depression, right? I don't know the exact study. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a scientist, right? But I have done my fair amount of research. I just want to put that out there. I remember reading a study once that they took a group of 20 people who had been on every pharmaceutical under the sun for depression, and they couldn't get it under control. None of them were working. They took these 20 people, and they did 3 weeks of microdosing coinciding with therapy. Okay. A week off, then a macro dose with their therapist in the room. Okay. 50% of those people are now cured from depression after one experience.
Macro dose experience.
Through the whole gamut,
Yeah.
right? It was a month-long program. It was a 30-day program. 3 weeks of micro, a week off to allow your tolerance levels to reset, and then a macro dose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first round cured 50% of those people from their untreatable depression with no negative side effects. They followed up with them a year later. They're still just fine, right? They took that other 50% that it didn't necessarily work on the first time, and they ran them through again. 50% of those people are now cured. So 75% of this group that had been deemed uncurable and untreatable are now living normal, healthy lives with no signs of depression. None. Why are we not offering this other than Big Pharma doesn't
Money.
like it?
Yeah, it's like money.
Right?
Yeah.
It's money and control. Big Pharma would rather see you on a pharmaceutical for the rest of your life that comes with side effects that they can give you other pills for, right? Most people I know that are on depression meds are on 2 or 3 other meds to combat the side effects that come with those meds.
Yeah.
When a couple of simple experiences done properly.
Yeah. It's a big like condition, but I think this entire podcast you've been explaining how to respond to. Yeah. Certainly.
You know, done the right way, this is an amazing healing medicine. And that's why I have the utmost respect for it.
Yeah.
But also am frustrated at all the things that it can do, all the things that it can heal, all the things that it can take care of, and we're not using it more than we are. I am happy to see that we are starting to open the research up again. You know, there's several different colleges, several different states running clinical studies and reporting back, and all we can hope is that the government will listen and acknowledge.
Big hope.
Yeah, acknowledge that it is a beneficial,
Yeah.
you know. That's all we can hope for.
Yeah.
But it's mind-blowing to me that we have that ability, and we're not utilizing it. Microdosing it's a lifesaver. You know, I don't know if you've ever microdosed or macrodosed.
So I did a couple grams one time, very first time, and then I did 5 grams one time. And
Okay.
I've not had a psychedelic trip on them, but I did have a collapsing. I didn't understand it at the time. I was talking to my friend about it, and he explained it to me that it was unity consciousness. Like I had this collapsing of everything. Like I knew that wall was there, but the wall wasn't there. Like like I knew that the distance right on the other side of that wall was the same thing inside. Like, you know, like just inside and outside was different. And then like I just like got lost staring at these trees without like it was like towards the fall, like the leaves were already gone. Mm-hmm. And so then it was just like the bare limbs. And prior to the experience, like somebody had pointed out to me like the whatever, like the ends of our nerve connections like look like the trees, and it's like, dude, I just had this experience where it felt like these trees were with me. It felt like I was with them. They were like they were my friends. Like it just like I've looked at trees my whole life, but like they were with me.
Yeah.
And I've not had like that psychedelic like you know, I've had other experiences with other substances. It's like, the walls are running, you know, and the whatever, the curtains twisting and
but not that like internal introspective.
Yeah, I mean like on the but I don't know. So I did it a few times. I was very hesitant to ever try them just because like I had seen somebody, I don't even know what substance they were on, but I saw somebody have a bad psychedelic experience. Like almost terrified me. And so then like I was just really scared. Like I had plenty of opportunities to do them, but it was always in the like fucking party around of it. It's like so I just always kind of said no. Yeah. And so the couple times that I've tried them, I mean, but like the hill, like the fucking sled tracks and the refresh, that shit, like, so I still think I get like these good benefits, like where I'll just notice like a small thought pattern and then like kind of immediately like, well, hold on, what is that all about?
Right.
Like even just like I did like a 1 gram mushroom. And and then like, just kind of throughout that week, like I was just a little gentler with myself. I gave myself a little more grace. But and so then now it's like I'm trying to, because I don't know. It's like, was I just trying to get fucked up? I don't think I was. I never considered doing a psychedelic until I lost my brother. I lost my brother in a car accident.
Okay.
And in 2023, and it was like less than a year after that. And so I started this thing called trauma releasing exercise, tension releasing exercise. David Berselli, it's called TRE.
Okay.
A friend put me onto that. Trying that, and that's like kind of autonomic nervous system. It's also trying to let go of like control and just kind of let your autonomic nervous system fire and find these frozen muscle fibers. Right. So I started to consider things like I knew I needed to go inside of myself and fix something. It's just like something wasn't right. And so that was when I tried the shrooms. So the intent was kind of like let go. Like I just think about death so much. It's not really morbid anymore, but it's just like there are decisions that it's just like, dude, if I'm on my deathbed tomorrow, like I'm not going to care about this. So then I don't care about it now, and it's been very freeing. And so like, so I don't know. Yeah, I haven't had like the transcendental like fucking disappearance or whatever, but I think I've still gotten good things out of it. And now it's just kind of like if I like find my way to them, I would consider growing. That would be something interesting, but
yeah. And it sounds like a set and setting thing, right? Because I've experienced the same thing, of like there's a difference between being outside and being in nature. It's beautiful, it's fun, it is inspiring and healthy, but the times that I have experienced the most inward thought, inward thinking, healing, dealing with trauma, typically for me happen inside, eyes closed. And that's the same way that the John Hopkins facility runs their treatments, right? They've actually created a playlist on Spotify. They've come up with about, I think it's 6.5 hours of music. And the thought behind it is that you put a face mask on and you lay down and you start the music when you take the dose. And the music guides you through. And the last time I had an experience, I did just that. And it works.
Interesting.
Let me tell you that. And so I think, maybe for you, part of it is that fear.
You
still have that fear and hesitation. So you're not giving in, right? Nobody has told you that it's okay.
That's kind of why I was like, whatever, like, because it was like, I bought 3.5 grams and I was like, oh, how many should I do? And just like, try some of them. And I was like, and then, but and then I went to the 5, and then the 5, same thing, just like, fuck it, let go. Like, that's cool. I'm okay if I fucking moonshot. I like was like, whatever. I don't have a fear that I'm not going to come back to this consciousness. And so, but then I tried the 5 and then it did. And so then I was like, well, I just saw it going maybe a little weird. And I was like, all right, dude, let's take the foot off the gas. Like, man, I'll revisit this in a couple years, and that's I'm sitting in that couple years. Whatever, man.
Yeah. But yeah, the therapeutic setting is different than a fun setting. And the last experience I had, which was a little over a year ago, it was another intense one. I lost my father 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and what I didn't realize is I hadn't fully grieved from that, and unexpectedly, it hopped right up in the karate chopped me in the neck.
That's the thing. Like I haven't finished grieving my brother. It's again, man. It's like the lapel du vide, the call to the void, dude. Just fucking like, The letting go thing that hits home so hard with me, for sure.
Yeah, and you'll find it when the time's right.
Yeah, I agree.
You'll find it, but it's all about set and setting.
Yeah,
it really is. Because you never hear about somebody who does do them at a party that really had some like profound moments of
I've not heard one. Literally not heard one. Yeah,
it's always, man, I had such a great time, but you never hear about somebody at a concert, no matter how much they ate, going, wow, I really sat down and dealt with this trauma that I've been packing around for life.
Yeah.
So I'm a very firm believer in set and setting.
Yeah.
And maybe a microdose lead up, might be beneficial for you too.
Okay.
Huge advocate for, I would say if I had to pick between micro and macro, I would pick micro. A true micro.
Which define that.
So another aggravation that's drawing negativity to the medicine is a lot of people, because of that ego we were talking about earlier.
Like they're macro dosing,
they're
like they're micro,
but calling a micro,
yes,
right?
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I took a 1 gram micro last night.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a micro dose.
Yeah,
Why don't
yeah.
you just say you went on a mild trip last night?
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's ego.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all or nothing for me. You know, I'm not going to mess around. A true microdose is 0.3 grams or less, right? And it all depends on our metabolism, our body weight.
So the purpose of that, though, is that it's not psychoactive at that level.
Exactly.
Yes.
The way I describe a micro is kind of like when you take a Tylenol for a headache. The headache goes away, but you're not fucked up.
Yeah.
Right? You just, oh, I feel normal.
Mhm.
The headache's gone.
Yeah.
Right? A true microdose should feel the same way in that it brings you clarity.
Yeah.
For me, it really slows down my ADHD.
The Coolville Organics
Yeah.
talked exactly about this.
So, because I taught him all this.
Shout out. Yeah, cool.
I mean, he's done a lot of his own research,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
like, I'm the one who really turned him on
That's
to
awesome.
microdosing,
Yeah,
right?
cool.
And you know, one thing that he told me too was like, he's played around with microdoses, and he now agrees with me because he's like, yeah, you know, I told him try 0.2, right? He told me what strain he was working with. I was like, try 0.2. And let me know how that feels. And he got back to me. He's like, dude, he's like, I could actually focus. He's like, my brain wasn't churning. The way I describe it to people is like, I'm that guy that's always trying to do everything at the same time. I got 10 Windows browsers open and I'm bouncing back and forth between all of them. Microdosing for me allows me to focus on tab 1, finish it, close it. Go to tab 2, finish it, close it. The rumination isn't there. It allows me focus. But if you go above your threshold, that disappears.
Mm.
And Adam said the same thing. You know, he was like, man, he was like, yeah. He's like, I get what you're saying. Of like, I tried this. I had amazing focus. I got all this stuff done. I felt really good. He's like, so I went a little more next time. He's like, it wasn't there. He's like, I didn't feel the same. I didn't have the motivation. I didn't have the focus. He's like, if anything, I was actually kind of like distracted because I was on that verge of entering that kind of trip threshold.
Yeah, it's like go the way. Yeah,
but I
yeah,
wasn't
for sure.
there.
Yeah.
You know, the way I describe it to people, because I've experienced what he's talking about, is like you can see the door, and the door is open, but you can't walk through it. It's like you know it's there, you can see that it's there, but you just can't quite get through the door. It's a weird spot, and so I would love to see people actually following a true microdose protocol. And there's a couple of different ones out there, but they've...
You do it like every day, every other day?
So I have my own opinions.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's what I'm here for.
So there's the Paul Stamets protocol. And I should say that both protocols use the same substances, okay? And they call for the same dosing. So I typically recommend people to start at 0.1 grams of psilocybin mushrooms, bump it up a little bit, but if you start to feel a little fuzzy, you know, if you start, back it off a hair, right? Because you shouldn't feel it. You should be able to take a microdose and go to work. It's actually perfect.
You get non-psychoactive dose.
Non-psychoactive, right? You combine that with lion's mane, which also is an incredible for nerve regeneration and brain health and neuroregenesis. It does a lot of the same things that we're looking for with the psilocybin, but it promotes new neuron growth. So very good for us, along with niacin, fast-acting niacin.
Why fast acting?
Because psilocybin is a constrictor of the blood vessels, and niacin opens the blood vessels, which makes the blood-brain barrier easier to pass through.
When it is vasodilated.
Right. Yes.
Big.
Yes.
Right, so you're taking the niacin so that the niacin will open everything up before
up.
The mushrooms are shrinking it down.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
I'm with you.
And that way it allows the medicine to get where we want it, right? We want it in our brain.
Yeah.
So it helps get that in there. The other thing that, Paul Stamets hasn't said this, but in my research, I found that niacin is very beneficial for our adrenal system. Well, if somebody has anxiety and somebody has depression and somebody has PTSD, they're always in fight or flight, which taxes our adrenal system.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is the niacin helping to push through the blood-brain barrier, it's also really good for our adrenal systems, which are probably taxed as well if we're dealing with those kind of situations. Paul Stamets also said he did it because he's been trying to get the FDA to approve this as a medicine, in that he wanted to encapsulate it all in one capsule, and it would prevent people from abusing it. Because I don't know if you've ever experienced niacin flush. It feels like sunburn.
I think that one of my buddies, like in college, would take niacin as a pre-workout.
Yeah, so
like he would just drink. He would drink a fucking caffeine, like a Monster, and just like pop.
Yeah.
But that should give me a headache.
Yeah, so a lot of pre-workouts do have niacin in them for that same reason, right? We want to open the blood vessels up. We want to get flow pumping. We want to get oxygen to the muscles, right? Because that's when we're at our prime. But yeah, a dose of niacin will make you feel like you're sunburnt. It's typically short-lived. I typically recommend people to take that with food, and it helps with it.
The whole protocol, you're saying?
Yeah. So like I take mine in the morning because I want to feel that focus throughout the day.
Of course.
So I get up in the morning, I eat breakfast, and on dose day, right after I eat breakfast, I take the stack. I take my psilocybin, my lion's mane, and my niacin all together. Generally 10 to 20 minutes, you'll feel the onset of the niacin. Sometimes you just get a little warm, a little fuzzy, and you're like, okay, it's working. If you don't eat, well, it feels like you got a really bad sunburn for about 10 or 15 minutes, and you'll turn beet red.
You said on dose day, how often?
So there's two different protocols. Paul Stamets is 5 on, 2 off. Okay. And I don't necessarily agree with it. Because we build tolerances to psilocybin extremely quickly, right? That's another reason why it's kind of a non-addicting substance, is because if you trip today and you try to trip tomorrow, you're going to be upset because our brains rapidly built a tolerance to it, and you're not going to get to that level that you got to yesterday. You need to give it some time in between.
Just like maybe it's a nature's fucking guiding.
Right, yeah, it's nature's unlimiter, right?
Yeah,
like, hey, man, you just did this yesterday. You're not doing this again today,
man.
right? We're not going to let you.
Yeah.
You're probably trying to hide from something, and that's not what we're here for.
I think that's a part of my story too.
Right?
I think so.
Yeah, you're trying to run. You're trying to hide. You did this yesterday. We're not going to let you hide from it again today. You need to live in it. You need to sit in it, right? So the Stamets protocol is 5 on, 2 off. And my theory on that is by the time you get to day 5, your tolerances are built up high enough that, sure, you're still getting the benefits from the lion's mane, and you probably still are getting some benefit from the psilocybin, but not as much as you did on day 1. So you take the weekend off to cleanse the serotonin receptors, which is what psilocybin works with, and then you start over again on Monday. James Fadiman, who is a doctor, Dr. James Fadiman, come up with a different protocol, which is the one I do, which is 1 on and 2 off. Okay, and it's a 30-day. They typically both recommend 30 days on, and then at least like a week or 2 off.
Just before you start another 30-day.
Before you start another 30-day, right? Yeah. Just to give your brain time to reset, give you time to kind of sit back and think about some things, and to let your tolerances drop back down, flush out those serotonin receptors, so that when you do start back in, it has its full effect. Yeah. But Fadiman's theory on the 1 on, 2 off is dose day is going to be great, right? Day 2, we're still taking the niacin and lion's mane. So we take niacin and lion's mane every day.
Yeah, okay.
Right? But the psilocybin is only every 3rd. Day 1's going to be a great day. It's dose day, right? Day 2 is still what we call afterglow. So we're still going to be feeling some of the effects of the psilocybin. Again, it's undetectable, but we'll just notice a little bit difference in our mood. We'll still have some of that focus. Day 3, he wants you to sit in reality. Right?
Back to it, motherfucker.
Back to it, right? Like, this is how you felt. This is what real life without substances feels like. I want you to remind you of that.
That's a very intriguing concept.
Right? And then the following day is a dose day again. So maybe we had a rough day on our non-dose day. Now dose day can maybe help us get through some of that stuff.
Or even understand, like, what was the resistance in that moment?
Yeah.
Now that I'm
because
back
it will bring things up for you.
Yeah, that's what cannabis does to me. That's why I use cannabis. Yeah.
My girlfriend, she had never used psilocybin ever. And, she was dealing with some stress and some stuff at work. And what she said was that for her, focus was a big one. It allowed her to focus. But what also happened for her was that it brought up things that she didn't think were traumas.
Like consciously. Like she didn't acknowledge them as that. Yes.
But not in such a way that it was scary or a bad trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, oh, God, and she broke down in tears. But just that throughout her day, some random thing that happened 20 years ago that she realized,
I'm still holding on to
still holding on to that, would show up. And she'd be like, maybe I should talk to my therapist about that. Didn't realize that was still stuck in my head, but not in a scary way.
Yeah.
And she said that's what she enjoyed it for, was that it let her know things in life that she hadn't taken care of, but needed to take care of. Yeah. Stuff that she had shoved way down deep and thought, yep, that's gone. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Surprise!
Yeah.
I'm still hanging out. I'm still here. And I think that's why that protocol was so successful, of the 3 weeks of microdosing coinciding with therapy before the macrodose, because that 3 weeks of microdosing allowed
it's like you're getting
all that stuff to come to the surface,
right? Yeah.
And that way you have intent with your macro of like, wow, okay, so this thing with my mom keeps coming up, right? This thing with my mom keeps coming up. So you keep talking to your therapist about the thing with your mom. And that way when you go into your macro, you can go in with the intent of, I'm going to squash this thing with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why that is such a successful regimen, in that why, sure, we can get benefits from just going on a random macro, but where the true beauty lies is preparing yourself for that macro through micro to have that experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And again, man, like you're explaining like all of this preparation and intent and love and just like, man, right? That's what people are misconstruing as, I'm going to rip this fucking ate the mushrooms, I'm going to go kick it. Like that's so far off base of what you just explained. What you just explained is so expansive and like, just limitless. Like, it's so beautiful.
It's intent.
Thank you. Thank you for being who you are.
Hey, thank you, man. Yeah, I'm so happy to have an outlet for this, right?
Awesome.
Instead of like looking around to see who's watching me, it's like, I can't talk about it now, right? Can we go somewhere else and talk about it? Or, because that stigma still does exist this isn't a conversation you strike up with some dude that you're sitting next to at the bar in a small town, right? Unless you can be like, all right, this guy's cool. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing. But the indifference is intent. I keep coming back to intent. But microdosing is an amazing tool too. It really is. Like nobody says you have to go balls to the wall to get benefit. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
A lot of athletes microdose. I knew a guy who was a kickboxer, and he microdosed on match days.
Wow.
Because he said that it allowed him such mental clarity and introspect. He knew what his opponent was doing before his opponent even moved. He was like, it just kind of like slowed down time. He's like, I could look in that dude's eyes and know he was getting ready to throw a right hook at me way before he ever even started loading up,
Dude, we could be tapping into something. You brought up Rogan. Rogan was just talking about people like that can communicate like telepathically, like those nonverbal autistic children that can, dude. Like, so it's like, are you tapping into some shit when you're in? Like, is there a wavelength that you're getting to that you're now receiving signal from shit? Like,
body energy is a big thing. It's a huge thing. I can typically read somebody's energy within seconds of meeting them. You know, so I do think that there is something beyond basic body language and verbal communication. I really do. Yeah, it's just such a diverse medicine, man. We can do so much with it.
Yeah.
And I hate that it's buried. Powerlifters love it.
Uh-huh.
You know, I know several powerlifters who have set PRs. Took them a little 0.2, 0.3 dose.
Nice.
You know, went to the gym because it allowed them that full focus and that full clarity. It shut off everything else.
Yeah. I mean, again, to the resistance, like it takes a lot of effort to hold in all that resistance. And it's like you just can't fathom what it's like to relinquish that. Because it's like, not only are you not spending that effort there, it's also just empty, right? It's like, if this pitcher is fucking to here and I pour the cup in it, man, it's like, what's going to happen versus, I just re-explained your backpack analogy.
Exactly. Exactly. To where, you know, like powerlifting is as much a mental sport as it is a physical sport.
Yeah.
And if you're underneath a bar with 500 pounds on it, but you're worried about rent being due next week, your brain's not in the game.
Yeah, man.
So if you can allow that focus and that shutdown, what's stopping you?
Yeah.
So.
Motherfuckers in suits for pharmaceutical. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Big money and big pharma.
Of course,
you know? Yep.
Yeah. Magic Man Mycology, this has been so incredible.
Yeah, it's been a great time.
I appreciate the stories, man. I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate the fighting the good fucking fight, man. Like, we need people like you around.
Yeah, we definitely need to have more people advocating medicinally.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, recurring invite, dude. Anytime you, like, some article pops and you want to talk about the new study, dude, like, recurring invite, you know how to get a hold of me?
We could go on for hours. Yeah. You know, like I feel like we've just scraped the tip of the iceberg.
That's great.
Off. But yes, if I'm going to give myself a little shout out.
Yeah,
here, right?
dude.
If anybody's interested, anybody has more questions, anybody's even ever had the slightest thought of cultivating their own medicine, please reach out to me.
Yeah.
Right? Find me on Instagram.
Magic Man Mycology.
Yep, my Magic Man Mycology. I'm probably shadow banned. Probably gonna have to search the whole name. My logo's a little top hat, right? Yeah, please reach out, ask questions, and then know that if you're ready to pull the trigger, www.magicmanmyco.com, and go right on there, pay it via credit card. I'll ship it in a discreet box right to your door. Comes with an instruction pamphlet.
Yeah, but then reach out to you for questions. Don't go somewhere else. Yes. Go back to the source.
Please come back to my Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, there's a QR code on the back of the instructions. Takes you right to my Instagram page if you're having trouble finding it. If you go to the web page, there's an email address on there. I'm responsive on both.
Awesome.
Please come and hit me up. Let's talk about it. Let's get you growing your own medicine.
Magic Man Mycology. You're the dude. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Cool.